David Seymour, soon to be Deputy Prime Minister and a man increasingly making much of the play inside the coalition, joins us now. G'day, David. Thanks so much for your time.
Hey, Duncan. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, the welfare bill at $42 billion. It's obviously a concerned act for some time because your policy is to raise the age of super to 67. Are you going to make any moves in this term, or is it off the table?
Well, it's not going to happen in this term just because we all campaigned on different things and none of the three parties got everything they wanted. We got a lot of things that we thought were important to our supporters. But ultimately, I think all of the parties are going to have a mature discussion about, do we want to be an outlier from Australia, Germany, UK, US, basically every country, even places like Italy, that you might not think of as being very fiscally prudent, they're making these changes. So I think at some point New Zealanders are going to have to ask, does it make sense to have a country with a total welfare bill of $42 billion, as you mentioned? You put that in perspective, government spending's only about 140. So you pay your taxes thinking that it's about roads and hospitals and police and things that deliver practical services, when in reality more than $1 in $4 is simply transferred to another person through some scheme. Now, I'm not saying there shouldn't be a pension, not saying there shouldn't be an unemployment benefit if you lose your job, but you have to ask yourself, when we barely have a defence budget, less than 1% of GDP, while the rest of the world is seriously committing to that, Australia at 2% of GDP and still rising, do we have to have some more honest conversations about these things?
Oh, and I think the answer is yes. Hence why we've got you on to have a chat today. Your policy is to gradually raise the age to 67. Do you think means testing needs to be part of this discussion as well?
Well, I think if you're going to have a conversation, then it's fair to put that on the table. I've never favoured means testing for the simple reason that if we agree that some people are going to do better and should pay more, there's basically two ways you can do that. One is that you have a tax system where if you earn more, you pay more, and then you have progressive tax, so you pay even higher rates. The other way is that you have the services delivered mostly to people who are, in greater need. Now, the thing is, at the moment, we do both those things. So a very small minority of people pay a really disproportionate amount of tax, and I think it's something like 5% of taxpayers pay 48% of income tax, or something like that. Those are 2019 figures. I don't think Treasury's updated it, but it won't have changed much. So 5% paying a third of all tax is about where we are. Then you say, okay, you also, for the most part, have government services that you don't get a huge amount unless you're quite hard up. And so you might ask yourself, do you want to then add to that? You can pay tax all your life, pay much higher taxes all your life because of progressive taxation, and then when you get to the end, you don't get the super that other people get. I mean, happy to have that discussion, but I think there's something a bit unfair about means testing. On the other hand, the basic age, someone will always say, oh, but what about tradies? What about builders? There may be some people in that position, but overwhelmingly, you meet someone who's 65 and they're still full of beans doing their work. Some of them try to retire, to find it's boring, go back to work. I think we've got to be a bit more open about this.
Yeah, because if you look at, as you said, the other countries are moving to 67. We started to, and then it got stopped, of course, as well. It would save, just looking at your policy, you'd save $16 billion over 12 years. Imagine that, $16 billion going into, job growth or back to people's pockets as tax cuts or whatever it could be. But $16 billion is no small shake over 12 years.
Yeah, it's probably more than that now. We did those calculations a couple of years ago.
Right.
Basically, the way it adds up is that at the moment, every year about 60,000 people turn 65. Now, of course, there's also some people at the other end who stop collecting it, but altogether you've got 30,000 more people every year collecting it. And that means that the government's bill increases by about 1.4 billion. So, to put that in perspective, we don't spend much more on that on, say, corrections or police or defence. These are serious amounts of money that dwarfs most of everything else we do. And I think we've got to start asking ourselves the question, is that our priority when an increasing number of these people are actually still happily working anyway?
Yeah, half of them. Half of the people in New Zealand aged between 65 and 69, I was looking at, are working. So, maybe they're forced to work, have to work, whatever, but they are working because we are fitter and feel better and, we have a longer life expectancy these days. I just wonder, though, when you say, we spend more on super than just about everything else, I was looking at those numbers. It's actually more unequivocal than that. We spend more on super than everything else. Super at $24 odd billion, nothing goes past it. Even our health budget's at $16 billion. I mean, we spend more on old people than we do on health and we do on education. It's ridiculous. We've lost David. We have just tried to off, but we'll try and get him back. We'll try and get him back. Bit of feedback's coming in though. We got him back. There we go. We need to spend more on the link as well, maybe more.
Hey, well.
I was just saying, David, that we spend more on super. Yeah, we spend more on super at 25 billion than we do on, say, education. So the future of our country, education, we spend 19 billion, and the future of health, we spend 16 billion. So it just dwarfs it. It's just a lump in the road,
Yeah, and look, it will anyway. And in a way, a lot of people say it won't be there when I grow up. I mean, or when I retire. I think one way to ensure that it is there is to make it more realistic, to align with other countries, to align with people's actual habits. Maybe you do something around the edge for people who say, look, I'm a tradie, I can't do it anymore. A lot of people in that instance actually stop doing the really physical work as their career goes on. So, I'm not saying everyone can, but the idea that, you become a roofer at 18 and you're still getting up on the roof at 67, that's not always the case. But you could think about options like, can you get earlier access to KiwiSaver, make that flexible? Could you make it, as Peter Dunn used to say, flexible so you get it earlier, but it reduces the rate? Those are possibilities too. If people really want to have that argument about, some people just can't keep working, then we can do that. But also just make the point that it used to be 60. And now it's 65. And now, if it was true that you can just never raise it because the society won't work and it's drastically unfair on people and no one can adapt to a change, then how on earth did it work when it went from 60 to 65 in the 90s? I mean, these changes have happened. They're happening in the rest of the country. And I think inevitably, at some point, a government's going to wake up and say, far out, we have to do this. And I would rather do it in a sort of structured, honest way than
where's Luxon on this then?
Crap itself.
Well, where's Luxon on this? I mean, have you had the discussion with him? Did you bring this up in the coalition negotiations? I mean, the National's so scared about touching it because of the surtax issues from the 90s, but is Luxon up for the debate?
Well, I'm sure he will be if enough people want to talk about it.